In his Leviathan, written against the backdrop of the English Civil War, Thomas Hobbes broke with a tradition that went back to Aristotle, a tradition that said the state was natural, and a tradition that said human beings have a highest end, and that is to live virtuously. In its place, Hobbes argues for a state of nature, a condition of war of all against all, because human beings seek their own self-preservation and self-interest. And he says that human beings are desirous creatures who can't be ultimately satiated, that they can't reach an ultimate end. In another way, the Leviathan turns against ancient tradition. In the book, Thomas Hobbes says, "Nothing has been the cause of so much tumult and disorder as our practice in Europe of reading the ancients." He says, "We read the ancient histories of Greece and Rome, and it is a constant source of disorder." And in fact, this is a perceptive observation by Thomas Hobbes. He says that our ideas of the struggle for liberty are fired by reading the classical texts, especially the classical historians. And in fact, in Hobbes' own day, in 17th century England, republicanism as a political ideology was being revived. In fact, in a way that it hadn't been for millennia. Hobbes is aware of an ideology that says that men can only be free in a republic. This idea that goes back to Rome, to the ancient world, and says that humans living under a king, under someone else's power, can never be truly free. The English Civil War would revive the republican tradition in England. It had been passed through Machiavelli and absorbed in England, and was finding expression in Hobbes' own day as a fierce ideology of opposition to royal power. And so the Leviathan is written against that idea of freedom, that republican idea of freedom, what Berlin calls positive liberty. Hobbes, in his Leviathan, in fact, devotes great attention to the idea of liberty. And Hobbes' idea of liberty is a strongly negative concept of liberty in Berlin's terminology. Hobbes says liberty is the ability to act without restraint. And in fact, Hobbes says that you can be free under a king. Hobbes says that, in fact, you can be free under an all-powerful sovereign. For Hobbes, liberty is purely this kind of negative liberty. And in fact, Hobbes offers what may seem to us a kind of peculiar definition of liberty, because Hobbes says that liberty is entirely compatible with necessity. Hobbes is a materialist, and we'll see the outcomes of a materialist philosophy. But Hobbes believes that things have causes, actions have causes, that they happen out of necessity. And Hobbes says that human beings act out of necessity, but this doesn't intrude upon the sphere of their freedom. Unless they're physically coerced from doing something, then they are free to act. And so if I pay you $1 million to go do something, to go eat a toad, you're free to do it, Hobbes believes. Hobbes says, if I say that I will throw you in prison unless you eat a toad, he actually thinks you're still free to do it or not to do it. For Hobbes, freedom is absolutely this sense that you are physically able to do something, that you're not physically restrained. And it's important because for Hobbes, freedom is entirely compatible with royal power. Hobbes wants to say that the English can be free under the rule of their kings. And so it is a radically different idea of freedom from the republican, from the positive concept of freedom as the power to do things. One of the most consequential arguments of the Leviathan is that the royal power, the sovereign, the Leviathan that is created by individuals leaving the state of nature must be obeyed. And this is the message of the Leviathan in the midst of civil conflict in his home country, that the sovereign must be obeyed, that its authority is absolute, and that humans do not have a right to disobey their sovereign government, and that they do not have a right to abolish it, to overthrow it, to revolt against their king. And so this is the legacy of the Leviathan, a materialist view of the human being as a creature with desires that will struggle with other creatures over finite resources like property and glory, and that to overcome this struggle, they will invest absolute sovereignty in a royal power that must be obeyed, and that this power is not incompatible with their freedom. And for Hobbes, that is the grounds of justice. For Hobbes, there is no order, there is no natural law beyond self-preservation that creates this Leviathan. And justice is only a convention. Justice, for Hobbes, is only obeying the laws that actually exist. In Hobbes' political philosophy, there is only the law that is the creation, that is a convention of humans to escape the miserable state of nature. And justice is only this, obeying the laws which actually exist.